Hey church, and welcome to worship here at Crossroads. We are so excited that you're here. If you're a guest with us, welcome. We're going to take a little bit of time to talk about what's happening this week at Crossroads. First of all, Halloween is coming up, and we want to encourage you to bring candy. We really need the candy as soon as possible for the trunk or treat. And we've got our box, our receptacles here at the Welcome Center if you want to drop those off here. And really all week, we need as much candy as we can get. It's a huge community event, a great way for our church to love on the community. So please help out with candy. If you would like to decorate a trunk, we still have signups for that at the Welcome Center and at Kid Check-In as well. So we encourage you to participate in those ways for trunk or treat. Next up, Operation Christmas Child is coming up soon. We would love for the church to put together as many of these boxes as possible. And really, it's the first year we're doing this here at Crossroads. We are a distribution center for this ministry, a collection site. And so we hope to have a lot of boxes that are put together for this important ministry. You can grab your box and more information at the Welcome Center. And again, we hope to have great participation from the congregation for Operation Christmas Child this year.
Hi Crossroads family. Last week was kickoff for Operation Christmas Child, where we collect our own shoe boxes that will be given to children around the world. But did you also know that this year Crossroads is going to be a drop-off location for area churches and organizations? November 13th through the 20th is National Collection Week, and this is where we need your help. We are anticipating bringing in hundreds of shoe boxes into Crossroads that will be combined with our own donations. If you would like to help, whether that is being here when the donations are dropped off or helping us package these up to get ready for transport, you can contact me. We would love to have you help serve. Thank you.
Coming up soon is our all-church worship service. That's this coming Sunday, October 29th. We hope that you will join us for worship on Sunday at 9:30 as we meet together as one church in the multipurpose building to celebrate our church together as one family. And again, we do that every once in a while, and we really hope that you'll participate in that event. After our all-church service on Sunday, October 29th at 6 o'clock, we will be offering a class that we call Crossroads Connect. If you would like to learn more about being a member of Crossroads, have questions, or just want to learn more about how to plug into our ministries here at the church, Crossroads Connect will be a great opportunity to learn more. That's this Sunday, October 29th at 6 p.m. with childcare provided here at the church. This is Pastor Appreciation Month, and as we always like to remind you, a great time to thank our ministers here at Crossroads. There are many opportunities to do this, and there's a welcome center to put thank you notes, gift cards, or other ways to show appreciation to our pastors at the Welcome Center. Also this week, the men's ministry and the women's ministry will be hosting meetings. Please check your bulletin to learn more about the details of these important upcoming events. That's it for this week. We hope that you enjoy worship.
Have you ever had to make a choice that affects the rest of your life? No matter where we go, struggles come when we say yes and no. You have to make the choice. Both do not work. The fences we are riding, the lines we are straddling, create unneeded tension, because all we're really doing is hiding. We have a choice to trust. Yes to what matters most to God, and no to what matters to the world.
Good morning, friends. Hey, it's good to see you. Hey, before we jump in this morning, I just want to bring even a little bit more clarity to an initiative that we're working on as a church together, and that is Operation Christmas Child. You heard in the video announcements, if you were here for those, that we have set a goal for 300 boxes. Now, what does that look like? These are shoe boxes. You can use the shoe boxes that we've got for you. You can use your own shoebox. You can buy a shoebox size plastic tote at the dollar store if you want. But what we do with these is we pack them full of different toys and different items, and then they get sent all over the world. And out in the lobby, there are boxes provided for you if you want to pick up a box. But there's also these guys right here. Hey, and what this does is this explains everything as far as what it looks like to pack a shoebox, what goes in the shoebox, what we're not allowed to put in the shoeboxes anymore. And so really want to encourage you to stop when you're leaving service today. Stop and pick up one of these. You choose whether or not you're going to pack the box for a boy or a girl. And here's why I love this, is because this is something that we do together. From the oldest person in our church to the youngest little kid, we are packing boxes together. And so our Sunday night little lambs, our 2-year-old through kindergarten, they're packing boxes. Our Joy Ministry, which is our senior adult, they're packing boxes. All the way across the board as a church, we're working on this. And so you pack the box and you bring it and drop it off here at the church. And we package them and then take them from there. But this is a church-wide thing that we're doing over the next several weeks. You can bring them in any time that you want between now and the second week in November. But this is what you need to kind of get that ball rolling. So I just want to bring some clarity to what that project looks like and how we can all be involved in it together. Today, we are continuing in our Yes or No series, talking about Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 5 when he is preaching and he talks about the choices, the oath, the commitments that we make. And he says there's not really an in-between, a gray area. It's a simple yes or no, which means we make the choice. And as we've been working through the series, we've been challenged with some of the choices that we make. The first choice that we decide yes or no to is Jesus. And so we say yes to Jesus and no to the world. And that's the choice that some of us have made, continue to make. There's some of us that need to make that. 2 weeks ago, we talked about our families. Yes to family, no to busy. In a world that is just running constantly, we say no to busy because we say yes to our family. Last week, we looked at part of Moses' life. And we say yes to adventure. We say yes to adventure and no to fear. And some of these have been kind of a spiritual challenge, and some of them have been more of the practical challenge. And today, we're going to land in the practical side of things. Another choice, and maybe the biggest choice that we make outside of following Jesus, is who we're going to marry. And the topic of marriage, the topic of who we're going to marry, the topic of who we did marry, is one of the biggest choices we make outside of whether or not we're going to follow Jesus. And now I want to kind of give warning. Before some of us check out, and I know there's some of us who are thinking, well, I'm not married. This is going to be a good one. All right, and we just check out and, wait for the song at the end and then move on with our day. I don't want you to do that, okay? Because there's some of us, if we're not married, we're in two categories. We're either in the hopeful, okay? We hope to be married someday. We hope to convince someone to marry us. We hope that we find Mr. Right, Mrs. Right. Maybe we already found them. They just don't know it yet, And so maybe there's one of those things, okay? And so if that's you, then here's your challenge for today. As we talk about what marriage looks like, prepare well. Don't just check out and say, oh, that doesn't apply to me. I'm not married. Prepare well for the day when you will be married. Prepare well now of what you need to do in your life and what we need to do together so that way we're ready when that day comes. If we have been married, okay, and we're not for different reasons right now, the challenge of today is we have a lot of truth to speak and a lot of wisdom to share. And so don't just check out saying, oh, I used to be or I was, because there's so much value that you bring to this conversation. For those of us that are married in the room, hold on, here we go. All right. Today, the choice that we are challenged with is, will we say yes to our marriage? And the opposite side of that, the biggest competition for your marriage is you. It's me. The biggest competition that we have for our saying yes to our marriage is us. I want to pray, and we're going to jump in. God, I'm thankful for this church. Father, I'm thankful that Father, I'm thankful that we can get together and we can celebrate how good you are. God, we stepped into this room all over the spectrum of life. But Father, we're here right now to meet you. Father, we want to be taught by you. We want to find truth in your word. We want to find hope for this next week. And so I pray that you will bring those. Father, I pray that you will speak loud and clear. Father, I pray your voice is the loudest in the room and that we will get out of your way. God, I pray that this morning, Father, I pray for those of us that aren't married but hopeful to be someday. Lord, I pray that you will show us things in our lives so we're prepared for that day when it gets here. Father, for those of us that were married but aren't anymore, I pray that you will help us to see the value that we have and the wisdom that we have in this conversation. And Father, for those of us that are married in the room right now, Father, I pray that you will challenge. I pray that maybe you will convict. I pray that you will renew and encourage. Father, and bring hope to that relationship in our lives. Father, I'm thankful that because of your grace, a room full of sinful people can get together and learn and laugh. We love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. I heard a story about an old preacher. He was up in his attic one day, and he was rummaging around. He was looking for an item, and he just couldn't find it. And he was frustrated because normally he's the organized type of guy. And as he's moving boxes around, seeing if what he was looking for fell behind, he kind of shoves this box out of the way. And as he does so, there's this pretty good-sized box sitting on the ground behind it. And he thinks to himself, that's interesting. I don't remember putting this box here. And as far as I know, I'm the only one who comes up in our attic to organize this stuff. I don't remember this box being here. And so, curiosity, he opens the box. And as he opens the box, he sees two items. He sees an egg carton and $2,000. And he thinks, this is the strangest box I've ever seen in my attic. And I didn't put it here. Where'd it come from? And so he begins to examine the box a little bit more, and he opens the egg carton up, and in it, up in his attic, are 3 eggs. He starts wondering, how long have these eggs been here? Like, what is going on? And more than that, why do I have $2,000 cash sitting in my attic? Like, there's a whole lot more I could do than just let this sit here in my attic. And so he's completely perplexed. He goes downstairs, and his wife is sitting at the kitchen table, and he says, I just found this box up in our attic. He said, I have no idea what it's from. And she said, oh, yeah? And he said, yeah. He said, I opened this box up. He said, I've never seen it. He said, and in it, there's an egg carton with 3 eggs, and there's $2,000 in cash. He's like, do you have any idea what this is from? And she said, oh, that's my box. Don't worry about it. He looks back at her, and he says, don't worry about what? And she said, oh, that's just my box. It's just for me. He's like, you have $2,000 in this box. It's not just for you. What's going on with this box? And she said, you really want to know? And he said, yeah, I would really love to know. And she said, well, she said, in 20 years of preaching, every time you preached a bad sermon, I put an egg in the box. Well, at this point, I mean, he's feeling pretty good about it. 20 years of preaching, I only got 3 bad sermons. I mean, that's a pretty good success rate. Like, and so he's feeling real good about himself. He said, oh, this is great. Only 3 bad sermons. And I mean, if you're asking me, I thought I had a whole lot more than that, but just 3. I mean, I can live with just 3. And he looks back at her and he says, well, why on earth? He said, that's great. I appreciate, I mean, that's a compliment to me. And he said, now why on earth do you have $2,000? And she looked back at him and she said, well, every time I got a dozen, I sold them. Something, we're going to wait for the whole room to get it. It'll kick in. There we go. All right, now we're ready to move on. Sometimes something can appear really good. At the very beginning, it can look awesome. But then the more you begin to learn about it and the more you begin to investigate it and the more you begin to experience it, oftentimes it can lose that excitement. It can lose the encouragement. It can lose all of the things that appeared really good can begin to fall away. And when it comes to the topic of marriage, marriage is one of those things. I mean, for those of us that are married in the room, when you think back or those that aren't, and maybe you dream of, you think back to, the first dates and the first kiss, and you think of the trips that you went on, and you think of, maybe meeting each other's parents for the first time, and then you begin to think of your wedding and the planning that went into that and what the day was, and you think of the honeymoon, and after that, moving into your first house or apartment or shed or whatever it was for you. You think of these things, it's just kind of this, blissful moment in time. And then you maybe had a kid. And like that, and then all of a sudden, you're up all night. And then just a simple conversation of, hey, what do you want for dinner? Turns into this giant argument because both people are operating on like an hour and a half of sleep. And what appeared on the front side is so good and just, it's like this magical time. Now all of a sudden it gets a little bit busier. And now there's kid number 1, or maybe there's kid number 2 or 3, or, whatever you're up to. Okay? And we've got kids, and then we've got schedules, and now we've got work because we've got to pay for all of this stuff that we're going to and that we're a part of, and meetings that we're involved in. And all of a sudden now it's, I have a spouse. I see them when I lay down at night. And what seems so good at the very beginning, it's lost happiness. It feels empty. There's no communication. And it's a little bit of a struggle. When it comes to this idea of marriage, it seems so good on the front side, and then if we're not careful, and sometimes even unintentionally, it just begins to fall apart. And you can get to the point where all of a sudden you just feel like you have a roommate of the opposite sex instead of a spouse. Because when it comes to this, here's what I know, which isn't a lot. Ask Emily. Okay, what I know is that of all the times that people have called me, emailed me, Facebooked me to want to come in and sit down in my office, the topic that we talk about more than anything else is marriage. The topic that's talked about, there's not even a close second. The topic that is the biggest struggle in life is the relationship with their spouse for lots of different reasons. And there are statistics about why marriage and the struggles of marriage and what it is and who it's between and all of these other things that prove every side of the argument. But what I continue to see is that it continues to be a struggle. And as I listened and I observed, here's what I've gained from those conversations, is that we've forgotten about the design, the original mainframe design of what God has for marriage. And we have begun to operate just on our own or our own ideas. And when we take God out of the equation, I will guarantee you your marriage will not be pretty. It's because we've forgotten about these mainframe constructs. And when we begin to forget about the mainframe, everything else on the outside will eventually begin to crumble. And so what does the mainframe look like? If we're to say yes to our marriage and no to me, then we got to know what we're saying yes to. If you brought a Bible, go ahead and open up to Ephesians. We're going to be maybe in a familiar passage. Ephesians chapter 5. Paul is writing. And if you didn't bring a Bible, that's fine. It'll be on the screen. You can also look it up on your phone. But Paul's writing to this early church in Ephesus, and the church is confused. They're confused as to who they're supposed to follow. They're confused as far as what relationships are supposed to look like. The city of Ephesus was filled with false gods and idols that they were supposed to fall down and worship to. And with all of this worldly tension going on around them, they begin to become confused as far as what is most important. And so Paul writes this letter to remind them who they are. Not just with their identity in Christ, but within your marriage, this is who you are. So in Ephesians chapter 5, Paul brings clarity to the main frames of what this looks like. We're going to begin in verse 21. It says this: "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit to your husbands. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing of water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one loves his wife. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one hated his own body, but they feed and care for their body, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. The two will become one flesh. And this is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself. And the wife must respect her husband. And now when we hear these words, especially in the society that we live in, the word submit doesn't jump to the top of our favorite word list, does it? And a lot of times we read these words and we read the word submit into just the wife, the woman's side of things. But before we jump into even what roles look like, there's responsibilities that we need to take on and make a choice to. Number one that Paul talks about is there's a submission to God. For both of us, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. There's a submission. There's a standing under the leadership of Christ in our homes. You see, in our homes, a priority of Christ will bring peace in your marriage. It doesn't mean it will make it perfect, but it will bring peace. When we begin to realize that Jesus is first, we will have more love to pass on to our spouse. The more we love Jesus, the more we begin to learn about his forgiveness, his grace, the more we begin to learn about his perseverance and his courage to love us when we're really unlovable. We will not just learn that, but we will gain that to be able to pass on to our spouse. And so, question number one really is, are we willing to submit to Christ? Because before we can even understand what submission to our spouse looks like, we have to understand what submission to Jesus looks like. But then, submission number two is submit to one another. What does that mean? Submit to one another. It means that you choose second. Listen, I'm a highly competitive person, okay? You can ask anybody that even plays board games with me. I don't like to lose. I'm competitive, all right? I guess it's in my genes. My dad's the same way or whatever, okay? And so being competitive, you know what I never hope for? Second place. Like, I never go into a game saying, you know what, I hope we come in second in this tournament. That'd be perfect. I hope I'm second place in Monopoly. That'd be great. I love that. Like, even in the most simple things, it is not within me to choose second. Like, I mean, if you talk to, silver medalists, it's all, I'm grateful for, I had the opportunity, this, that, and the other, and they're talking about, you ask them a week later about the experience, it's what they're working on to get to gold, right? Like, it's not, oh, man, I came into this hoping for second, and, that's what I did. Like, second is not often the goal. The goal is to win. However, when we choose that we're going to say yes to our marriage more than me, it means that we choose second. It means that we choose second, that we are constantly looking for opportunities in our lives to elevate our spouse. That they will understand the love of Christ more than we do. That they will be successful. That they will love our kids more. And that we want to push them up to the responsibilities that God has called them to where they can succeed, to where they can grow, to where they can love Jesus even better than we do. Submit to one another. Because we submit to Jesus, we choose second in our marriage. Now, just to clarify, what choosing second doesn't mean is, hey, where are we going to eat tonight? I don't know, I'm choosing second. All right? No. All right? I'm not getting those emails this week. Choose second, which means we make a choice, an intentional choice, where we are not the most important. We make an intentional choice that someone else's priorities are more important than us. When we choose submission in these two ways, when we choose to submit to Jesus, when we choose second, then all of a sudden the roles become a whole lot more easy. Wives, listen, I know in our culture of equality and everything like that, that submit is not a fun word, but guess what? We're not in culture, we're in church and we're talking about God's word, and that's what it says. And it says to submit, which means we follow. We follow. If the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. Submit might not be a fun word, but the more we love Jesus, the easier it will be to submit. Now, ladies, I want to challenge you in the room, if you're married and right now controlling your house, that's not following the instructions of God. Right now, if your goal is to change your husband into who you want him to be, instead of helping him become a better follower of Jesus, then we're missing the boat. That's not your responsibility. God can change your husband, but it's not our responsibility. We make jokes, all right, and don't pretend that you've not heard the joke, who wears the pants in the relationship, and if you don't want to admit that, it's, well, I don't wear the pants, but I set them out, so someone can put them on, things like that. And all of that is funny, and we laugh at it. But there's mainframe guidelines that God gives us that when we step out of in order to win, in order to get our way, it will begin to deteriorate our marriage. Some of us have strong personalities, and that's great. And I know that God has incredible plans for your strong personality. But if your strong personality is strong-arming your husband and not following his leadership, that's a sin. That's not the way that God designed it. And I'm not saying that because I'm a dude. I'm saying it because that's how God lines it out, and because I love you and want you to have the very best marriage. Strong personalities are great. And there's a lot of gifts within them. But they're not meant to be used to just be a force and a wrecking ball in our homes to get what we want. When we say yes to our marriage, we say yes to second. Which means back in the beginning when God made woman, it was to be a helper. Which means we help elevate our husband to be the very best follower of Jesus and leader in our home possible. We help them succeed. We help them get ahead. We help them do well. Saying yes to our marriage means that we say no to me. Now, guys, I know what some of you are probably thinking around the room. Ha, you let her have it. Your turn. You see, when we say yes to Jesus and when we say yes to second, our responsibility of leadership is no light thing. I mean, in verse 25, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Hey, we talk about the cross and we talk about crucifixion. We talk about the brutality of it. We talk about how ugly it was. We talk about death and all of these things. Do you realize that all of those things were done with love? And the very example that Paul gives us, guys in the room, is that we are to love our wives in the same way. We're to love our wives where we give up, where we choose second, so we can lead well. Guys, it is our responsibility to lead our homes and our marriages. if your wife, I'm just going to be honest, if your wife has to argue with you on Saturday night or Sunday morning for you to be here, if she had to drag you here this morning, shame on you. It is not her job to lead your family towards Jesus. It's yours. Don't make your wife do that. Love her enough and love Jesus more that the only conversation will be who gets in the shower first on Sunday morning. And if you disagree about that, get in the shower first. It is not her job. It's not her role to play. It's yours. Because we love Jesus, because we submit to him, then we pick up the leadership mantle in our homes. This doesn't mean dictator. It doesn't mean boss. It doesn't mean fear monger. It means leader, which means we're going ahead and we're setting the example for our wife. We're setting the example for our kids. We're going out ahead and catching the arrows so our wife does not have to. We're the leaders. We're out in front. When the world wants to criticize, we bring faith into the conversation. When everything seems hopeless, we find hope. And I know some of us, we're probably playing pretend because we're in church and we're probably saying to ourselves, well, I don't argue. We don't argue in our marriage. You're lying. You're in church. That's up to you. Okay? We argue in our house. We don't always get along. Okay? There's disagreements in our house. And I've said it before, and I continue to say it because it's one of the biggest things that I see. Guys in the room, if there is conflict in your home, if there's an argument between you and your spouse, it is your responsibility to initiate forgiveness. If we're to love our wives the way that Christ loved the church, Jesus loved the church by initiating forgiveness in ways that it has never been seen before. Which means that as the leaders of our house, we are to initiate forgiveness in ways where it has never been seen before. Because that's our responsibility. Is it comfortable? No. I don't want to be the first one to talk. I don't want to say I'm sorry first. But that's the role that we pick up. When we say yes to our marriage, guys, we say no to me. We say no to our priority list because we care about her heart more. But if we're honest with ourselves, we don't often wake up and say, you know what? I'm going to say no to my marriage today. You know, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be the most selfish person in my house. We probably, if that's how you wake up, then come talk to me after, okay? But we probably don't wake up with that mentality. We wake up and we just begin to encounter life. And a lot of times what happens in our busy society, in our society that runs all the time, we unintentionally say no to our marriages. Let me illustrate it this way. Each of us, let's say, husband, wife, we're a pitcher full of water. Okay? And we can either pour into our marriage or we cannot. And a lot of times what happens is we say, I love my spouse. I love our marriage. But we've got these kids, and I really love my kids. I want them to know that I love them as well. I want them to know that I'm involved and I'm here, and so I'm going to pour into my kids. Dads, this is us, and we say, you know what? My kids are interested in sports now, and finally old enough to maybe go hunting, and so I want that experience with them. I want to help coach. I want to, watch them shoot their first deer. I want to be there. And guys, we've got work. Like we've got to provide. We've got to take care of things in that realm. And so we got to go to work. We got to put in long hours because promotions sometimes mean more money. And so we're going to pour ourselves into that. And the guys invited us over for Monday Night Football. It's only once a month, but we'll put a little bit there. And it's bow season right now, okay? Gun season's right around the corner, and I got to put meat on the table, right? Yeah. So we pour ourselves a little bit in there, and then we say, well, I've got a little bit left. Ladies, not we. You carried your kids. And so you want to invest in them. You want nothing more than your kids to know that you are crazy about them. And so you pour into them. You pour into school activities. You want to be involved. You want to be there. And so you pour into that. And every once in a while, you want to go out and you want to, enjoy dinner with some friends and maybe go shopping. And so you pour into that. And then there's a little bit left. And we sit empty, and we expect our marriage to run on less than half. And here's the struggle, is that none of these are bad choices. But this will always be a better choice. Because the best thing that you can give your kids is a healthy marriage. By far. Because I guarantee your kids will forget if you forget a PTA meeting. But they will never forget juggling two households because you had to file for divorce. The best thing that you can give your grandkids is a healthy marriage. Where you have to say no to some of these other things so you can say yes to some of the most important things to God. Because here's where the struggle comes in, and here's where I have most of my conversations in my office, is that the kids, they grow up. And the sports teams end. And the guys, they move away or they have kids. And we've already got deer hanging on the wall and the freezer's full. And ladies, the kids move away. They go to college and they have friends and they want to go to their friend's house. The club meetings and after school programs disappear. And we're left with us and a third full marriage and nothing to do. And we sit and wonder because for so many years we've said no to this, we don't know how to say yes. And it's unintentional. We don't wake up saying, I'm going to pour into something else. We just wake up and do it. And in the process, we say no. Because we want all of these other good things, which are still good. But what won't be good is when your kids go to college and you don't even know how to talk to one another. What won't be good is when all of the club meetings end and the games are over and you are uncomfortable to go on a date with your spouse. Our truth for this morning is this. Marriage is not a game to win, it's a life to give. Marriage, it's not a game to win, it's a life to give. You're not trying to get ahead, you're not trying to promote, you're not trying to win at the end of the day. You're not trying to accomplish more than your spouse. You're not keeping records of rights and wrongs. It's not a game to win, it's a life to give. And when you look at what the call is by Paul, hey, because you love Jesus, because you follow Jesus, the way Jesus loved the church, all of these Jesus references, and Jesus himself lives out this idea. He did not come to this world to win. He came to this world with a life to give. You know what Jesus didn't do? Jesus didn't sit up in heaven and say, you know what? I'm going to earth to argue with the Pharisees, and I'm going to win. That's why I'm going. No. Jesus didn't sit up in heaven and say, you know what, I'm going to step out of heaven and I'm going to step to earth just so all the sick people can be healed. And then I'll be the most well-known. No. Those would have been winning advantages. But Jesus didn't step out of heaven so he could win. He stepped out of heaven to give his life for you and for me. He chose second when he chose the grave. He chose second when he chose our cross. He chose second when he chose our brutality. He chose second when he spent 3 days in a grave. Why? Because he loved us more. And the love that Jesus shows us is not this wimpy, romantic, blissful love. It's love that was brutally beaten. It's love that cost him his life. It's love that put him in a grave. It's love where he got spit at. It's love where he got made fun of in front of a whole crowd of people. It's rugged and nasty and gritty love. Because it wasn't a game to win. It was a life to give. So you and I can have life. Your marriage, if you're married today, your marriage is not a game to win. If right now you have a score sheet in your head, it's time to lay that puppy down at the foot of the cross. It's not about getting ahead. It's not about winning. It's not about who's better or worse at this and that. It's about giving your life up so your spouse can see Jesus more clearly on a daily basis. If you want to test where you're at on this, ask yourself the question, if my spouse needed to see someone who loved Jesus really well, would I be the first person that they would look at? Our marriages are not meant for us to win. Our marriages are meant to be a gift. A gift that we take care of and a gift that we choose. Where it's not about us. Because when we submit to Jesus and we submit to one another, when we say yes to our marriages, we say yes to second. Because we say no to me. Why don't we go ahead and stand together? We're going to celebrate and worship Jesus. If it wasn't for the grace and the hope and the forgiveness of Jesus, we'd have no shot with our spouse. He's the orchestrator. He's the one that puts it all together. He's the one that designed it in the beginning. And so we will celebrate Jesus, the fact that we've been forgiven, so we can give forgiveness to our spouse. We're going to celebrate Jesus because we've been forgiven, so someday we don't bring a whole bunch of baggage and we don't bring a whole bunch of regrets into a marriage. We bring a life free in Jesus. We're going to celebrate Jesus because for some of us, our spouse is celebrating with him right now. We're going to celebrate Jesus because if in our first marriage we didn't choose second, guess what, friends? You still have hope to. There's no marriage too broken. There's no people too broken for us not to say yes. Yes to Jesus. Yes to our marriage means no to me. What will our choice be this morning? Let's sing.